So as I said in my last video, this one is going to be about how I eliminated my rear fender on my V7 Moto Guzzi. This one is a V7 III. You should know I am not a mechanic. I don't have experience in working on bikes or cars or anything like that. So I needed to purchase a kit which was easy enough for me to do it myself. It wasn't very easy to find a kit for a Guzzi. They're not easy to find, at least here in North America. But I was able to find one in the US, and I'm leaving the information here in the details of the description of the video. It's a company called K-Town Speed, and they make this kit, which was relatively easy to install with a few glitches that I will show you on this video. So I hope you enjoy it, and I hope this helps. Hey folks, sorry I had to interrupt this video. I'm actually filming this after I filmed the previous part and some of the parts you'll watch next. The reason I did that is because what I'd done was I posted the video online on how I eliminated this fender from my Guzzi, and one of you viewers, thank you very much Michael, watched it and actually suggested a way simpler way of doing this. So I do this, I learn from trial and error and share it with you people so that you have an easier time, and we're learning from each other. So you'll see later on in the video I'll mark it, but it has to do with the cabling. This is the rear fender and these cables. This cable came with it. It was attached to these lights here and attached to the battery at this end, and I'll explain this later, but basically I did it a lot harder in that I removed all of these parts first, which I didn't have to. All I had to do was remove this end from the battery, and I'll show you how to do that. Having said that, I don't regret doing all of this extra work because I actually learned a lot about my bike and how things are wired. So it's worth definitely watching the entire video. First thing we're gonna do is remove the seat and put it carefully aside. So we're trying to eliminate this fender, this piece here. And this piece actually goes through and is attached, it looks like, at 4 or 5 different spots. 2 of them are right here, 2 are here, and it looks like there's one here. So what we're gonna need is a hexagon Allen key 6.0 for these 2, and just a plier or a wrench for these bolts. So let's go ahead and remove that. This hex 6.0 Allen key with these 2 brackets out. So there's a nut on the back that you're gonna have to grab onto with a pair of pliers, which is not the easiest thing to do. You have to find your way in the back there. That's what that nut looks like on the back. These 2 bolts are a little bit tricky because on the other side of them there is a nut under there. So what I've had to do is use a wrench like this, as you can see, get back in here, fasten this wrench to it, make it tight, and then with pliers undo this. So I'm going to do the same thing. I've done this one. Keep that safe. I'm going to do the same thing for the right side. Now there is a washer here, so make sure you keep that washer safe. So you're basically removing this piece, the nut, the little washer, and the nut right there. So we've taken out these 2, we've taken out these 2 on the side. The last one that's remaining is this, and it's a little bit tricky because just like the other ones, there's a nut on the other underside, and it's very tricky to get to, so I'm actually just trying to use my fingers to hold it somehow, and it seems to be coming out easy just with a set of pliers. You do have to hold from the bottom. Seems to be the only way it's going to turn. So once the screw is out, it looks like the whole thing comes off. And now is when we have to start taking care of the cabling. But before I do that, I just want to make sure I've kept all my screws carefully. What I've come to realize is once I've removed the screws, and this is loose, that this cable right here, which is the cable for the brakes and the signal lights, is attached to the underside of it, and I'm going to attempt to get access at that by basically removing these screws which were behind the license plate. Just rewinding to earlier on in the process to show you the correct way of doing it. So I'm just trying to simulate it. You may recall that there was this cable that was attached to the existing rear fender, which is attached to the brakes, which used to go through here. And all that did was kind of go on through here and then attach to this white block. And all this time, all I had to do was actually just undo this white block like that and connect the K-Town Speedway block. And that's all I had to do. Once that's done, it's all connected. You basically just take this cable out. You might need to jig it through the hole a little bit. Take it out and get rid of it, or keep it in storage. So it looks like in order to get access to the back side of these lights, you're gonna actually have to go behind here. And there are 3 metal screws in the back that keep this together that you're going to need a Phillips head screwdriver for, which I'm using here. Once I removed these 3 screws, this plastic piece actually comes right off. This separate piece comes right off. And you're left with this. And this right here is the cable that you want access to. And it looks like we have to unscrew the brake light in the back to get access to it. There we go. Looks like it's a little bit more complicated than I thought. The task here is to have access to all of the cables needed for the brakes and the left and right signal, but when I open this up, it looks like they're divided as they go to the left and the right. And in order to get access to the left and right indicator cables, you have to actually open this light, which you can do by accessing the screw on the back, which is what I did. So I opened this up, and over here on the back, you can see these connectors, which is what we need to take out, but I'll show you a close-up of that. You do the same thing on the other side. Now that you have access to all the cables, you can actually take this piece off. I noticed something as I was trying to remove this piece and ran into a complication. And remember, I do this so that you all don't have to learn the hard way and can learn through my process. So this cable right here, which is actually the cable that is attached to the key lock for the seat. So that's attached, and it goes through this hole, and more importantly, it goes through this hole, which is actually part of that rubber piece that I'm trying to get rid of. So somehow I have to remove this cable from here, and when I open the side panel up to see where the lock is, this is not something that's easily, I can take off and replace easily. And on the underside of this other end, to remove this piece here, so I can finally slide the old fender right off. Uses a 4.0 hex key. When I took this part off, that's the part that was attached under it, I noticed that the cable actually goes through that little hole. which is part of this plastic thing. So I had to figure out a way to detach this cable so that I can take it through that hole. So it was like this, and I undid that part, pulled it up, and as you can see, that cable needs to come off, and these two things were pried right together, and I actually took a pair of pliers and opened it up a bit so I can actually take this cable off. I'm gonna have to put it back in the same spot, so I don't want to pry it too much open. Once I take that off, I can hopefully just slide it through that hole. And finally, be able to take that fender off. So now that I have taken that plastic piece out, it's time to put the replacement in here. Screws that I will use for them were actually sent by K-Town. I'm going to put this cable on the outside. Make sure that you leave this cable on the top side, and the cable that comes out of the bike on the top side, and the cable that comes from the key lock for the seat should also be on the top side of this eliminator. Nothing should be on the bottom. Before we actually screw this plate up, after we've made sure everything is on top, remember we have to reattach this component, which is the seat lock component. Parts are, this part will have to go in here, slide through that part. We had pried that open, slide it back in through that part. I'm going to take a pair of pliers and just tighten this up the way it was before. Now K-Town has given us 2 screws with nuts and 2 without. I'm going to use the ones with the nuts on the back here for a little bit of extra support. K-Town screws actually use a 5.0 hex. So what we want to do now is connect the cables, and it's a little bit tricky because this is the receiver from the replacement fender eliminator from K-Town, and these are all the cables that came out of the stock. So to figure out, there are 5 receptor points in this, and there's so many of these cables. To figure that out, I had to do a bit of trial and error. We know that these 2 form the left and right lights. We know that these 2 form the brakes, and this is the ground. So there's clearly some extras. I've written to K-Town and they have not responded, so what I've gone ahead and done is done some trial and error. So what we need to do here is obviously plug these cables in and test them out. Now I've done that, and this is the configuration that I found works. Is the right indicator for me was the red and blue pairing. There's a dark blue and light blue pairing, a dark blue and red pairing. So the dark blue and red pairing is my right hand signal. So I'm going to put that into the middle segment. Like that. So red on top, blue on bottom, or if you look at it this way. So once I do that, I plug the key in, I turn the key in. Now to the right indicator, this should work. And it looks like it does, so let's turn that off. Now for the left indicator, it's the other pair, it's the dark blue and the light blue. We want to put that on the next one, the right side. And it matters which one you put up on top or bottom. It's not just any random one. So you're going to put the 2 dark blue ones in the same line. So I've put them both on the bottom, and I'll put the light blue one same line as the red. So now that those 4 are in, let's test the left indicator. That works. Right indicator, that works. However, the brake's not connected yet. So for the brake, these plastic things actually come off. They're like this, and you can actually go in and test each one. See, if I plug that one in, that seems to control the brakes. Yeah. So instead of leaving it loose like that, I'm gonna put it back into this plastic sleeve and try and like slot it in there. And it's not a perfect fit, but it does make the connection and it does work. So you got the right indicator, the left indicator, and brakes. Now that takes care of that, except we still have the ground and the other brake light to take care of. So for the ground, really all you have to do is just connect it to any metal part on your bike. You don't even really have to stress about it too much. Just gonna put it right there. It should work. And for the other brake light, since it's already sealed in its plastic thing, you can just sort of leave it nicely tucked in. Before we actually screw this plate up, after we've made sure everything is on top, remember we have to reattach this component, which is the seat lock component. Parts are, remember, they looks like this, where this part will have to go in here, slide through that part. Remember, we had pried that open, slide it back in through that part. I'm going to take a pair of pliers and just tighten this up the way it was before. Of course, once these screws are tight, you make sure that the seat lock works okay. Make sure all of the screws are tight and everything's clean and your license plate is installed. Really all you gotta do is put your seat back and you're done.